Hi guys, welcome to my channel. I've got a special treat for you today. Today's video will be a little bit different. Today we're going to interview my dear friend, Elliot Field. Elliot lives in Palm Springs, California. He's 90 years old and he's had a very interesting professional and personal life. He's actually written a book about it all. Here's the book. And I will tell more of you about how to get the book at the end of the interview. So I hope you sit down and enjoy the interview with Elliot. If you liked it, you can get the book later. I will include the link in the description of the video. Well, let's get on with it and let's talk to Elliot. Hi Elliot, how are you today?
Okay, thank you.
Good. So, you were born in 1927.
Correct.
That means you were a child in the 30s.
Correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like to be a child in the 30s in the northeastern United States?
In the Boston area. It was tough. My folks, mother was an at-home mother, and I had an older brother and a younger brother, and so it was mom and dad and I. And the good part was you could have a 10-room apartment rented in the Depression and,
wow.
and pay $30 a month for it. But Dad was only making $30 a week working for a department store as an upholsterer. So there was good stuff and bad stuff looking back on it. But looking back on it, we were a very dear, good, well-knit, happy, let's have a good time family. And my folks were immigrants from Ukraine, from Russia, and they learned the language from listening to the radio and going to the movies.
And did they speak English to you, or did they speak Yiddish to you? Or Russian?
All three. They spoke Yiddish to one another. They spoke English to us boys. And they spoke Russian when they didn't want anybody to understand what was going on. Right. Which is tough, because I would love for them to, because I learned Yiddish because it was around all the time, and still maintain it, understand it, but I'd love to have known Russian as well as they.
Yeah. I know one peculiar thing about you is that you were one of the last few victims of polio. Can you tell us a little bit what it was like to be a kid with that condition?
Terrible. Just plain terrible. But happily I had a I don't care-ism, and I remember, first of all, 1930, and I was 3 years old. 1930 was a epidemic year. So polio was all over the place, and we lived in Revere, Massachusetts, and right near the water, and I don't know if water had anything to do with it, but at 3 years old I got polio and was affected from the hips on down. So everything hips on up is fine and no problem, and I do gym, and I've done gym, and I swim, and I'm very cautious about my physical being. And I've gotten around for that for 9 decades, so I've got to be doing something right. But it was tough stuff and not an easy drill.
Okay, thanks Elliot. So with you contracting polio at such an early age, how did that affect your schooling? What happened to your, did you go to a regular school, or did you have to go to a special school?
All three. First grade in Revere, trying to think of her name, Ballany. Miss Ballany came to the house and taught me first grade. And when she wasn't there, we called her Miss Baloney.
Right.
And she was dear and good and very successful. Second grade, I tried to go mainline. Couldn't do it. My father had to push me up a hill, not in a wheelchair, in a carriage, in a wicker carriage, and I'd get terrible guff from other kids saying, "Look at the big baby in the baby cage."
Yeah, it must have been tough.
It was, and it was hurtful, and I'm 9 decades later, and it's still hurtful.
Yeah, yeah.
But there it is. And you either let it stop you, or you let it anger you, and you go on.
That's right. You either give into it or you learn to live with it, and
Exactly.
makes you a tougher person.
I guess tough is a good word. Angry is not a good word. There's a lot of anger in me that I wish weren't there, but there's a lot of, well, let's just do it, which I've done.
Yeah, yeah. Elliot, what advice would you give to a younger person or any kind of person who has a disability and uses that as an excuse not to pursue their dreams or be miserable? Because you've lived your life with a disability and you've got a very long and a fulfilling life. What advice would you give to someone who's in a similar position and maybe they don't feel as ambitious as you did?
Well, the advice would be, get ambitious. The first time I went to summer camp, they did a play called The Emperor's New Clothes, and they cast me as the emperor, and I was wearing a leg brace. And I paraded around in my undershorts, because the emperor goes down the street, he doesn't know what's going on, but he's parading around in his shorts. And somebody finally says, "Hey, the emperor's got no clothes." And then it's a big surprise to the emperor. Well, I try not to get surprised. I just march around in my undershorts if I have to. My parents were the most marvelous parents in the world. They took me around to friends and relatives and knew I was listening to the radio a lot and I knew a lot of songs. So they'd say, "Oh, tell them a song." And I'd have to tell them a song. And in the Boy Scouts, I got to be a singer and a storyteller at the firesides. And a friend of mine who was a shrink, Leon Brenner, said, now I'm a teenager, he said, "Elliot, you're always doing these show things. There's a show in town on the CBS network, they're having auditions, go have an audition." And that started me in radio on the CBS radio network, coast to coast. Knock off the handicap jazz and just do what you want to do what you love to do, and I wish you well.
So you also mentioned earlier to me that you ended up going to a school for disabled kids. Can you tell me a little bit what that school was and how it worked back in the 30s and the early 40s?
Oh, exactly, sure. So we've done Miss Ballany at home. We've done Try to Go Mainstream, which didn't work. And then my folks found out that there was a school called Dickinsonian, the Industrial School for Crippled and Deformed Children. That was my education, grade 2 through grade 8. I finally went mainstream at 9 through 12. And that was a tough and a marvelous and a good scene. They changed the name from out of the Dickens area they moved from Boston near Symphony Hall off Huntington Avenue. They moved from there to where I attended, to Lexington, and they have a fine school and a fine campus nowadays, and they're called the Cutting School, and I contribute to their good work.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, and I know your career in the radio, which was the bulk of your livelihood and your passion, started very early on when you were still living in Massachusetts and you were 14 years old, I believe. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got interested and how you got into the radio?
Happily, we were living in Dorchester then, moved out of the Revere area, living in Dorchester, and I was being picked up for school in a bus and so forth, and I had friends next door, and preteen friends, and one of them was Sidney Pike, lived next door, and we talked to each other on tin cans. Have you ever done that?
I've heard about that. I've never done it, but yeah, when I was a kid in Poland, we did something similar. Yeah.
There you go. There was a valley, an aisle, a walkway, a large walkway between us, and we were door to door across a walkway, talking on tin cans and a line between us. Sidney Pike, my senior patrol leader in scouting. That's what got me into my career, is scouting. And I wonder about scouting, and I go, from subject to subject, but I just talk from where I come from, and scouting I don't think is that much of a big deal anymore.
Well, they still have scouts, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts and all that.
It was a big deal in my life.
So what does that have to do with the radio? What's the connection?
He got me into doing firesides and doing scouting and getting active and forgetting about the leg braces and the crutches, and got me new friends. And one of the new friends was Leon Brenner, who turned out to be a shrink. Mm-hmm. He's gone since. Sid Pike got to be, and still around, got to be Ted Turner's first general manager at his radio station in Atlanta. Dorchester, Mass. has turned out some pretty good entertainment people.
Sounds like it.
So they all said, we have firesides, and you're always performing, acting, singing songs, doing stuff, and being part of. Why don't you think about entertainment? And I'm 13 years old at the time, and they put it in my head. And I'd already developed the ability and or the willingness and or the heart and or the wanting to do it. And Leon Brenner came by, another Boy Scout, and he says, okay, Sid Pike's got you on the trail, but I'll get you in the business. You can audition at WEEI, CBS in Boston, for a show on Saturday mornings all over the country, 82 stations, coast to coast, CBS network. Audition, see how you do. I auditioned, and I did 3 years with the company.
Wonderful. So when you graduated high school, you already had
3 years.
3 years experience of working in the radio.
Right, and on the network.
Where did your life take you after high school?
College, University of Florida. Had a rich Uncle Henry, my great Uncle Henry, my mother's uncle. But families get to where, they're of the same age, but he's her uncle, and he's my grand uncle. But he was a great guy. He helped my older brother through school, going through Emerson College, mm-hmm. which is kind of an announcer school. And Hank got to be the public address announcer at Fenway Park, which is like being the Pope in Boston. He was just over home plate, every ball game, doing the play-by-play. So Uncle Henry helped me through Gainesville, University of Florida. No, he said, you can come down here and you can go to the University of Miami. Mr. Taylor was the once a month advisor who'd come to Roxburgh Memorial High School for boys. And we talked, and I said, I've got an uncle who'll see me through school in Florida. He wants me to go to the University of Miami. Mr. Taylor said, University of Miami is kind of a playboy school. He says, you're a decent student. He says, go to the University of Florida. You'll get a good education, which I did, and I loved, and I made the Hall of Fame, and I worked radio all those years because they had a studio, an on-campus radio station, regular radio station, got paid $100 a month. And
I recall from your book that you had one of the first tougher interviews down in Florida.
I guess, yeah, to get the job.
Yes.
I don't want to give the whole book away.
That's true. Let him read about it. But Elliot describes a very interesting interview he had down in Florida.
A very tough guy that I had to pass.
Yes.
And the what happened is in
it's in the book.
In the book, and it's called Last of the Seven Swinging Gentlemen.
That's right. And you will have the link to the book in the description of the video. You can get it on Amazon.
Thank you.
So it sounds like you enjoyed your time in Florida and you progressed your radio career there. So what happened when you finished the university?
I got a job. I took, my class graduated in June or July of 1945. 1945. I graduated 6 months before my class. So I had worked radio all the 3.5 years I was at Gainesville at the university. Worked for WRUF, Mutual Network. The Thanksgiving holiday before my graduation in February, I went to Miami and I got 2 jobs. A job teaching school at a private school, and a job that's during the day, mornings and early afternoon, and then in the evening I got a job at WORL doing radio.
Let me ask you this. So if you graduated in 1945...
No, 49.
Oh, 49. Okay, I'm sorry. So, I was going to ask you, did the World War II have any impact on your family or friends in terms of maybe your slightly older friends getting drafted? And
Oh yeah.
How did it feel? How did the World War II feel to you? What impact did it have on you?
Well, I entered the University of Florida in 1945. I registered for the draft in 1945. I was 18 years old. I registered in Gainesville, Florida, and I was 4F. I'm wearing 2 braces and walking sticks. So, yes, but then in 1945, when I was in school at Florida, here came the VA, the veterans, who'd been in Germany and been in the war and driven tanks and driven trucks and ammunition and had war experience. They were fraternity brothers. They were all older than me, and they were a great group to be fraternity brothers with. One of them had, one of my fraternity brothers from Orlando did the photograph that's in the Smithsonian.
Wow.
Yeah, of the cordwood, the bodies that were molded, set up as cordwood in the concentration camps when they were dead. Yeah, he took that picture, and so I went to school with graduates of the war, and I was a graduate of high school. It's a great mix.
Yeah. So after I know that from having read your book, I know you, soon after Florida, you ended up in Texas. Tell me how that came about.
Well, I did 7 years in Florida altogether.
Okay.
3.5 years at Gainesville on radio, and then I had work in Miami because I had gone to audition ahead of time before I graduated, and I did like 3.5 more years in Miami doing radio. But then I felt I'd gone as far as I could go. Miami wasn't enough for me anyway, as challenging a market, and I was looking for higher things. By then my older brother was in Boston on radio, and he said, well, if you're itchy in Florida, why don't you come up and do summer relief for all of us vacationing DJs. You'll do all of the shifts. And I said, I'm for that. And I left Florida, left jobs, and did summer replacement in Boston.
Okay.
Bigger market.
Mm-hmm.
And got marvelously lucky. Somebody from Hollywood, a record plugger named George J., was record plugging in Boston, heard me in Boston, and thought, well, this guy should be out west if he wants to go. And he was kind of a champion for me, and that helped. Oh, and I went to New York. I told my folks, like I told my folks when I graduated high school, I said, okay, I've done high school, now I'm going to go to Hollywood. No, I'm going to go to New York and be a star.
Right.
And they said, good, right after your college education. They would let me go be a star.
Right.
Once I was doing summer relief in Boston and I was in a bigger market, I went to New York, knocked on doors, and I couldn't get arrested in New York, much less accepted.
Right.
But coming back from New York, I read Broadcasting Magazine. And, well, I'll let the book describe the rest of it.
Okay, exactly. You guys have to read the book. It's very interesting. So, I know it eventually ends up in Texas. Not eventually, but via Texas. How did you get there?
Okay. In Providence, coming back from New York,
Yeah.
I'm reading the want ads in Broadcasting Magazine, and one of the ads says, "Genius required, Dallas, Texas."
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the way I was at the time, it didn't offend me. I was thinking, well, let's give it a try.
Right.
And I sent them an audition, and they sent back a telegram that said, "We want you yesterday."
Wow.
So I started off with the McClendon organization, which owned many stations. I did 3 weeks in Dallas, just trying out for them. 3 weeks doing 6 to 9 at night, where I couldn't hurt them.
Right.
Then 5 months in San Antonio, noon to 3 in the afternoon, where I could hurt them, but didn't. And then the morning man in Houston for 7 months.
Wow.
And the guy who heard me in Boston a year ago heard me in Houston and said, you got to go out west.
So when you were in Texas, and so you had evening, noon, and morning slots, so you had exposure to different audiences. So did you have a talk show, or were you playing music, or was it a combination of both?
Gordon McClendon and a guy from Omaha, Nebraska, whose name I disremember at the moment, hopefully it'll pop up, were the inventors of Top 40 radio. Gordon would get on the air and talk Japanese, because in the Army he learned to talk Japanese.
Wow.
They did the unexpected.
Yeah.
And he had a highly formalized way to broadcast. And if there are any aspiring broadcasters taking part, let me share the which of which there was no whicher that Gordon McClendon taught me. You do not open the microphone unless you have something interesting or entertaining to say. Other than that, don't open the microphone. It's either interesting or entertaining. Well, interesting is the time and the temperature. Everybody got to know what time and temperature, what city you're in, and so forth and so forth. Entertaining, that's up to you. And I came up with a cast of thousands because I do voices, and even though I'm hoarse today, I've done voices beyond doing radio.
I know you developed several characters, and I'm not going to push it too much, but did you already have those alternative characters alive in Texas, or were they only alive in California?
No, they were developed in Texas. They were developed in Florida. I had a newsman. I did a thing in Gainesville. First of all, the station studio was upstairs and near the cow barns, our famous WRUF studios. And I did a show called Insomnia Serenade, local, directed mostly at the student body. And the student body, when I entered University of Florida, they're in the 30,000s now. We were 1,500 freshmen and 1,500 upperclassmen, 3,000 for the whole school. And the upperclassmen were mostly GIs returning from the war. I invented a newsman based on a character I'd heard in Boston. And I had him coming up the stairs, and I had friends visiting, and I'll never forget, I'm talking about the newsman walking up the stairs and coming into the studio, and I'm looking at this friend of mine who has terror in his eyes because he knows nobody is walking up the stairs and nobody's coming into the studio, and he was really shook. And then I come on with the voice of the newsman, and he goes, oh, now I understand.
So I know there were, I think, 7 of them. I will only mention 2. You created character called Walter Windshield Alfred, Windshield, Alfred Hotchkiss, and Tex.
Tex, right.
Right.
I did text accidentally. No, I didn't do it accidentally. I stole it from the Bob Hope Show.
Oh, okay.
And you have to steal a lot and make it your own in doing what you do in any kind of business. I'm sure Einstein stole from whoever and
Oh yeah,
whoever.
we build on the progress of previous predecessors.
Check. So one night I heard the Bob Hope Show, and he had one of his associates doing this Western voice. And I thought, I can do that. So I'm doing it, and it ends up with where the two voices are really distinguishable one from the other. So you really don't know if Tex is for real or I'm doing Tex. Most guys who do voices do a woman's voice and do it poorly, and they know he's doing a woman's voice but all right, they're listening and they're enjoying. But I did Tex. When I got through with the shift, the morning shift in Houston, the general manager of the station meets me in the hallway. I'm just coming out with my coffee cup and all the stuff I bring in. And he says, Gordon called. Gordon McClendon, who was the chief of all chiefs, the owner of the radio station, and brilliant. And he says, Gordon called, he said, tell Elliot, whatever he did this morning, he needs to do more. And Tex was born.
And so it worked. People loved it. And the producers loved it, right?
I get mail. We're in, what, 2018?
2018.
2018. I started Tex in Houston in
1955, 56?
57.
57.
Because Hollywood started in 58. Started it in May to December of 57. And Tex gets fan mail in Cathedral City, Palm Springs, Coachella Valley, to this day.
Wow, that's
60
incredible.
years later.
He still has fans after all these years. Okay, so you knew I won't let you go without you bringing Tex back to life for us. Could you please bring him back to life for us for a minute?
Well, I'll turn my back. Because the original thing was, well, how you doing? Well, I'm a-going. Oh, Elliot, I'm a-going. And I'm a-going fast. Oh, but before I go, I got one thing to say. Well, what's that? I'm a-going. Oh, come on.
That was good.
Oh, and Tex got to be a character on the Hulk.
Oh yeah,
They said they needed a gravel voice guy. I forget his name. So and so, fight Hulk, and I did a gravel voice on Hulk.
Would you have any advice for people who have a desirable, deep, sexy kind of voice, for men particularly, I'm asking? What would be their pathway to radio or television if they want to use their voice to make money or just to fulfill their dreams and be on the radio?
From personal experience, start having your folks push you to your embarrassment when you're visiting friends and family, because I could sing. And then, oh, Elliot, sing a song. And I hated it, but I'd do it. And that got me on in the business. And I'm 7 or 8 years old and I'm hating it. But I'm singing songs and I'm learning songs and, gee, that's not so bad. And so start with that. And if you can't start with that, start with a deep soul feeling. I work a lot from soul. And I have a Catholic friend and former associate and radio announcer who's now a Catholic priest. And we're very good friends. And he taught the word soul to me from the first time anybody else mentioned soul. Because I believe in soul, and I believe you work from soul. And you gotta build it.
Yeah.
And when you've done that, you've got a little confidence in you. You can do whatever you want. You want to be an astronaut, be an astronaut. You want to be a radio announcer, go. There aren't many radio announcers anymore. They're all personalities, and or they're on television. You asked advice. Develop your soul. Respect your soul. Start with that. Go to school. Learn a lot of things. University of Florida, learn everything, stuff I do 50 years later. Do your due diligence. What's due diligence? When you buy a house, you do due diligence. I don't know what due diligence is, but I think due diligence is studying, knowing what's being sold around you, knowing the atmosphere, knowing the business, being comfortable in the business, really wanting to do the business, doing an apprenticeship for about 8 or 10 years, and then you're ready.
Yeah. You worked in Texas in different cities for 7 months. I know eventually you continued west. You went west, young man. You went west. So tell us how you ended up leaving Texas and what made you come to California?
Oh, okay. It started in Boston. When I left Boston for Texas, I went on American Airlines, and at Logan Airport in Boston, the entrance to, they didn't have hallways. You got down on the tarmac and you did stairs up to the American Airlines flagship. And but before you got to the stairway, there's a sign here that says Dallas and a sign here that says Los Angeles. And I'm looking at the signs, and I'm in Boston going to Dallas, and the sign says we're eventually going to Los Angeles, this airplane. And I thought, I got goosebumps like I'm getting goosebumps now. And I thought, boy, that's a message to you, Elliot. Let it be thus, Dallas, Los Angeles. I got a picture in Life magazine in page 58 or something like that. A friend of mine put it together, and I have it on my wall in the living room. You want to pan over to it?
Yeah, we'll bring it up.
He did it up, this friend of mine did it up as a front page. But read that, what it says.
Okay, so this says, aspiring to the big time, DJ Elliot Field of Kilt, K-I-L-T in Houston, cheerfully joins his station's wacky promotion campaign. As part of a charity auction, Field offered to swap a shoelace he had for anything of value and ended up with a 4-year-old teen top mare. Sale price of mare will go to Children's Hospital.
There you go. So, I
hope you guys can see that.
So how did I get to Los Angeles? Overnight or late afternoon on an American Airlines flight out of Houston, and I had 2 offers, which is a nice way to go. Interesting way to go as well. I got a telegram from the manager of KABC in Los Angeles while I was in Houston, because I was doing Morning Man. And all of a sudden I got a full page in Life magazine in July of 1957. And I get it, and so in, again, kind of Thanksgiving time, I get a telegram from KABC in Los Angeles saying, we'll give you $10,000 more than what I was earning in Houston, and you can be the station program director and do the morning show. And I shared the telegram with my general manager in Houston and my fellow DJs in Houston, and they said, don't do that. And I'm all excited. And they said, do not do that, because Uncle Don comes on, the network is tied to ABC, you'll be competing with ABC shows, nobody will listen to you, and you will die in Hollywood. So don't do that. And I'm thinking, fine, I've got an offer, and they say don't take it, and I'm looking at $10,000 per annum more. But somehow the wheels turned around, and happily I got some good fortune, and they arranged my associates in Houston and the management in Houston said to a station they had their eye on that they were wanting to buy in Los Angeles. And they said, go to this station. It's an independent station. You won't get lost. We're going to take it over eventually. We're going to bring the winning format to it. You'll be on a winning team, wait it out, and we'll see what we can do. Well, what they did was they got me an alternate bid for less money than WKABC, and I took the less money, and I went to KFWB, which stood for Keeps Field from Walking Barefoot, and took the lesser money and the higher opportunity and did 7 years in Hollywood and a lot of good things.
So we ended with you having arrived in LA in the late 50s. Tell us a little bit about your colleagues. I know there were 7 of you, the famous 7 swinging gentlemen. Tell us a little bit about your work there.
Okay, it was work and it was fun, and it was the accumulation of a long travel. I had gone as far as I could go in Florida. University of Florida, worked all through college, worked radio. Then 7 years in Miami, and 1956 was my year of decision. And I decided, well, I've got to move on and hopefully move up. And that's the way of it, I guess, with performers. It's move on and move up. And eventually you get to the Keith circuit in vaudeville, or you get to our associates. We were even 4 people who were old KFWB people: Al Jarvis, Joe Yoakum, Mitch Reed, Bill Balance, and we were the newies from McClendon, from Texas: Elliot Field, Bruce Hayes, Ted Quillen, and one I'm forgetting, but which one did I forget? Doesn't matter. We were 4 and 4, and we 4 had to convince the other 4 who thought we were crazy, thought we were youngsters, thought we were newcomers, all of which we were, thought we were just the newest on the block and beware. And we worked it out, meaning we convinced them that we came with a formula, and we were working with a formula. And the program director was Chuck Bloor, who worked under the formula, and the formula won, and in 30 days we were #1.
You mentioned the formula. So what was the relationship between the formula and your freedom to let out your creativity and contribute your own content?
Oh, there was plenty of room. And the formula said, above all things, don't open the microphone unless you have something pertinent, something informative. Don't open the mic until you have something informative or entertaining to say. So that gave you pretty good guidance. Something informative, the time, the temperature. Give them the time, give them the temperature all the time. They're sweating in the freeway or on their way to the beach. They're interested to know what the temperature is and what the time is. Give it to them. Informative, you do your thing, but do it very, very well and make it entertaining. And I have the joy now of being, I see write-ups regarding Elliot Field in my dotage and in my retirement. And they refer to Elliot Field as actor, which really gives me a good feeling, because I worked as a DJ with a cast of thousands. I did voices, I did impressions, I did my own creation of people, and doing various things on the show. It was entertainment.
I know at one point there was a strike action in your radio station. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and what were the repercussions of a person striking in the late 50s or early 60s?
Yeah, it was 61. And a strike is war. I am highly against war. I don't like war. I think we could live a decent life world over without war. And yet we've had war and tribal strife from the day one. Breaks my heart. The strike at KFWB was the first after strike ever. American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. And the strike was about, Cleve Herman was one of our news people, and he also did Ion Sports, KFWB Ion Sports, as an extra item and extra pay. So Cleve Herman was not only news, but he was sports. And he had a rapid fire division. He was a marvelous performer. But the underlings, or the alongings, the equalings of Cleve Herman, didn't do extra time. So they got what is known as scale. They got, which was, I think scale in Los Angeles at that time was $15,000 a year. And in 1958, $15,000 was pretty good money. They didn't get extra money, they got scale. Cleve Herman got a few threepence extra, and they rebelled. No, if he gets extra, we get extra. And management got its nose in a bend, and AFTRA got its nose in a bend, and we were on strike, and everybody was out of work. Unless you passed the strike bounds and you were a scab, which I wouldn't do, and I did half a year without work. However, AFTRA paid us minimally, even though we were on strike. You got to pay the rent, and they helped us pay the rent. But beyond that, we were free agents, and I got to knock on some doors to do actor stuff. And I did freelance acting on ABC, ABC afternoon show called Jury in the Afternoon, something like that. And got extra work, or they helped us get extra work. In fact, they helped us get agents, and the agents got us commercial work if we earned it. Some did, some didn't. Happily, I was among the one who earned it. Strike was over, on we go.
So this strike situation ties into my next question. I know that sometimes you and other DJs needed or wanted to make some extra money. And I know one of the ways to do it was to organize and DJ so-called record hops. Tell us, what is a record hop, and tell us a little bit about what they look like.
Oh, they looked like Dick Clark's show. Kids on a dance floor dancing. But you were there in person. They were there in person. No television, no radio, no cameras. You brought the records. Usually there were special agents to work up the record hops. And there was a standard fee. It wasn't anything extravagant. However, the most I think you could get for a record hop, or the most I ever got, was $50 extra from whatever you did. And it took being off of your air shift, in an auditorium or in a place where they could dance. One youngster, one fan reminded me years later, he says, you know, you did a record hop in the alley behind my daddy's donut shop. And evidently I did a record hop in an alley behind a kid's donut shop. But we also did record hops in varied places. And I did a year, more than a year long to do I think it was every Thursday night as a record hop for the Little Red Schoolhouse in Hawthorne, California. It was a great get-together, and it was a learning experience in that evidently Hawthorne was a divided community, and the kids on this side of the community danced on that side of the ballroom, and the kids on this side of the community danced on this side of the ballroom, of the Little Red Schoolhouse. And you could see a line, you could detect a line just separating the two. But there were no hassles, there were no, hey, that's my date, there were no, you're dancing with my girl. It was perfectly fine decorum, everybody had a good time. I feel badly because one time I didn't have a record that one of the kids asked for. He gave me his copy of the record. I forgot to give it back to him. I still feel badly about that.
Now I want to ask you a little bit about your personal life. So you mentioned in the book that the women in Texas fascinated you and turned your head many times, but you didn't really settle down until you moved to California. So tell us a little bit about your personal life and the women in your life and the children.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm from New England. I grew up in Boston and Dorchester, Massachusetts. Total square. Total square. I was a square in Boston. Well, I learned a few things in Texas, so I was less of a square in San Antonio. I think the best time I had in my life on the air was in San Antonio. Then I was less square in Houston, and still got to Los Angeles with grass coming out of my ear. And Joe Yoakum, who was an associate DJ, he was an old-timer, and he kind of took me under his wing. And he said, Elliot, you're new to Hollywood. You've got to know a few things about Hollywood. And it was dear of him to do that and share that and be a friend. He said, you've got to consider Hollywood as being a large playpen, and you got to watch out for the kids with the sharp toys. And you've got to watch out also about dating. So I was very particular about dating. And let me see, I got to Hollywood in '58, all of '58, all of '59. Did not marry until I found who turned out to be my first wife in 1960. And I wrote about it in the book, which is, I think you're either showing it or going to show the book. But I find that I wrote 2 memoirs, and there are a lot of stuff that shares about both lives, and 3 lives really, more than one. The travel life before the DJing, the personal life, inclusive of post-polio since age 3, the on the way to Hollywood life, in the Hollywood life, and thereafter. So it tells a lot, and personal stuff is learning, just plain learning along the way. And happily, I was able to do that. And in my dotage, you might want to ask, because I'm in my 9th decade, and every so often I slow down, and you might understand that takes 9 decades of paying attention and learning and being bright and able. But I've learned a lot. I'm like the farmer's insurance commercial. You've probably seen it on television. I know a lot because I've seen a lot. I've been through a lot.
Thanks for that, Elliot. So you've been married twice, and guys, you can get more juicy details on Elliot's personal life from this book. You can get a link to the book in the description of the video, and you can buy it on Amazon. But coming back to you, there was a particular incident in your personal life that I was intrigued by, that I do want to bring up now. Apparently, a young man once approached you and said that you were his possible father. And tell me how that affected you and what happened there.
Okay. Unique experience, unique for me, tragic, hurtful. My first marriage went 7 years, 3 children. I've had 5 children in 2 marriages in all. And I spoke with a friend and said, of the 5 children I have as family, 3 remain as very close friends. Not children, not family, yes children, yes family, but very close friends, good friends. I live alone as we speak, and that's no fun. But this friend bucked me up saying, 3 out of 5, you're in the Hall of Fame. You're batting 600. So 3 out of 5, 2 out of the 5 are PhDs, and 3 out of 5 is very close friends is great. In Hollywood, watching out for the kids with the sharp toys, you also have to watch out about your acquaintances. I had a short acquaintance with a young lady. I was a young man. And when I married my second wife, who was the love of my life, Mary Louise Devitt Field, Mary and I had 2 children. They're the PhDs. Mary up and died. We lived together 15 years, and she expired. And she had smoked a lot. She had smoked, maybe in her young years, maybe 3 packs a day. We went, and she smoked and I smoked. I would smoke. I don't currently smoke. I haven't smoked in better than 30 years, but I did smoke cigars, cigarettes, pipe. And Mary finally said, I'm going to quit. And then she said, when we had our first son and our baby boy, she said, I'm not going to carry this child and smoke. And she kept to that promise. During that time, before that time, and during the time, we went on a second honeymoon to Scottsdale, Arizona. And in the middle of it, she had hard of breath. And we went to a doctor in Scottsdale. He said, run down to Mary, run down the hall, come back. When she came back, he says, anybody in your family have emphysema? Gives me shivers to remember the occasion. And she says, no. He says, well, you've got it. And you need not smoke. And she says, I'm trying very hard, and I'm determining I will not carry a child further while smoking. And some less than 10 years later, she died. And she's been gone over 25 years now. And I miss her every day, and I talk to her every day. And I say, living alone is just no fun. So when you have a short or a long relationship with another sex in Hollywood, you have to watch all P's and Q's, and I tried to. And when Mary and I were newly married, I got a correspondence from a former date in Los Angeles and a certificate saying, you are the father of my newborn child. And you can understand, just newlywed with the love of my life, what that brought on. But Mary was good and true and kind and able and honest. And we went to San Bernardino to confront the situation, and could not confront it because the accusing lady and the child would not show up when we showed up. So maybe best idea in that situation is found an attorney who's a friend, and said, get a blood test. If people are not showing up and people are not owning up, and people are accusing, get a blood test. Got a blood test, insisted there be a child blood test to correspond to mine. The child did not meet the qualifications, and the accusation was false.
We're getting towards the end, and I want to focus on the fact that even though you've been out of that situation for many years now, you still get fan mail for some of the work you do, and you still get people asking you for autographs. Tell us a little bit about that.
That's dear and appreciated. I invented a character with a doppelganger. If you know your psychology, you know a doppelganger is a separate person to yourself. Some people they put away for having doppelgangers. Me, they abided. And I could talk to myself between me and a character I invented called Tex. Tex still gets fan mail. I still get fan mail. Happily, because before I was married, I did a lot of dating, and I do this a lot, and you're wondering, why does he hold his hand over his chest like that? If you can see it on this film. I entertain every so often at an old folks home, and we have question and answer, and one of the people in the old folks home said, why are you always tapping your chest in question and answer time? If you're wondering, it's because I like to remind myself I'm talking from the heart at all times, and that's the way I come on, and that's the way I operate. So it's a habit, and I don't mind having that habit. Now I got off on another track. Did other work, and had got to have an agent, got to have a business manager, which Joe Yoakum helped me understand you need to have in Hollywood if you want to save a dime of your earnings. And got to date a lady before I was wed in Hollywood who never accused me of childbirth. We would just dated a couple of times because she was from Texas. Beautiful young lady. And she asked on one of our dates, do you know Joe Barbera? And I said, everybody knows Barbera. It's Hanna-Barbera, and they produce those marvelous cartoons. She said, you do voices, and I hear you, and I'd love you to meet Joe Barbera. And I said, I'd love to meet Joe Barbera. We did. Dawes Butler, who is a magician with voices, and I did the first 5 episodes of Quick Draw McGraw. So now I'm an employee of, a freelance employee of Hanna-Barbera. And I did with Dawes Butler the first 5 Quick Draw McGraws, and then had the opportunity to do 3 Flintstones, one of which was Alvin Brick Rock Presents, and I was the star attraction on Alvin Brick Rock Presents.
And here is an example of some of the fan mail that you get. If you want to hold it up like here, and I'll try to, and it just so you guys see, it says, Elliot, can you please sign these shots like this? So yeah, I mean this features Alvin the Brick Rock, correct?
No, this is one of the previous ones to Brick Rock.
Okay.
I paid, AFTRA and SAG let you do 5 voices on any one show. So I did 5 voices of this episode, and I think this was called Superstone, but I'm not sure. But this Goonie